My son has no mouth, and yet I love him. Written by Lucas Horley, author of the novel My Eyes. So I posted on here a while back about my son's strange condition, and I'm starting to think I might have come across as a little melodramatic. I hope I was. Maybe. I don't know. Every day I have to give my son what I've come to call his smile. Every night his mouth seals itself shut, and every morning I have to use a razor to cut it open. Other than that, he's almost an entirely normal, sweet, wonderful, great, adorable kid. Almost. It's obvious to me that most kids love candy or ice cream and have a difficult time eating their vegetables. My son loves small animals. Not in the way that most children love small animals, mind you. He eats them. Oh, I've come to accept that now. I'm sure that I have. Oh, I think. Since my previous post, I found him kneeling over the body of a possum. Do not ask me how, but my son somehow figured out a way to withdraw the poor thing's solid, tiny heart from the jagged spot in the possum's chest. I looked over the dead animal and then back at my son. He stared at his shoes, sniffling. "Are you sad it's dead?" I asked him. Maintaining eye contact with the ground, he shook his head. "Hey!" Still, he looked down, rubbing the tip of his shoes into the grass. I reached out and grabbed his chin with my forefinger and thumb, pulling his watery face up to meet mine. "It'll be all right, buddy," I said, hoping that saying it aloud would somehow make me feel better about it. I'm honestly terrified of the boy, but I can't let him see that. I don't want him to think that his father thinks he's a monster. I also don't want him to think about taking a nibble off me. I dug a less than perfect grave in the backyard after wiping the red grime from my son's mouth and chucked the possum in, pinching it by its back fur so that I wouldn't have to touch any of the bloody mess. I made my son brush his teeth and floss. Then I put him to bed and settled on the couch with Captain Trips lounging on my lap. Oh, sorry. Captain Trips is the puppy. Yes, I remember. Lots of you were worried he would die. He is fine. He is a good boy. I scrolled through Google on my tablet while rubbing Captain's soft ear absent-mindedly. Gruesome images passed my eyes as I looked over picture after picture of disfigured children with medical issues. I've been looking up similar conditions in children, wondering whether or not there was a possible solution to his issue. There are plenty of children born with disabilities and sealed orifices. Did you know that some people are born without anuses? Doctors are left with no other options in these cases but to cut the skin covering the sphincter. That's horrifying no matter how you slice it. I didn't mean that to come out like that. You know what I mean. It's terrible. I apologize to anyone that may have been born without an anus who heard that. Anyway, yes, plenty of children are born that way. I've yet to find any children whose orifices seal up overnight, every night. I've also yet to see any cases of children like that who have an insatiable hunger for live small game. So here's what I'm thinking, and don't laugh at me, please. I think there must be a paranormal reason behind all of this. There must be something going on here beyond human understanding. I was pulled from my thought as I felt a pair of eyes on me. It was my son. He was rubbing the corners of his eyes. His mouth had already partially sealed shut, so currently it was little more than a pinhole. After some motioning, I realized he was thirsty, so we went to the kitchen and I poured him a small glass of water, pushing a straw into his mouth. He slurped it down and I kissed him on the head, ushering him off to bed with a pat on the shoulder. At least that was something I never had to worry about. He'd never been a bedwetter. Captain was asleep on the couch when I returned, sighing heavy as I sat next to him. I resolved to think on it some more in the morning and lifted Captain off the couch, taking him to my bed and tucking him under the blanket so that his snout was well above the blanket. Even with my mind racing, I was able to sleep easily enough. I was startled awake by a high-pitched yelp. In seconds, I was wide awake, flicking the lamp on my bedside table on. My stomach churned and I felt sick and cold all of a sudden. I had never ever been so fucking scared in my life. There was my son at the edge of the bed, eyes wide, as though he'd been caught with his hand in the cookie jar. But Captain's tail fell from my son's open mouth, and the pup quickly shot over to my side of the bed, tucking his injured tail beneath him. My son had one of the large kitchen knives I usually kept in the wooden block near the sink in his hand. His mouth was open. He'd given himself a smile. His hand was not as trained as mine, and so his teeth were exposed in a snarl and wriggly fashion. The knife clanged to the floor. "Hey," I whispered to him. "Hey?" he whispered back. "What were you doing here?" "Nothing." He held back a quivering, bloody bottom lip. I scooted across the bed, throwing the covers off and grabbing him by his small shoulders. "Don't do that, all right?" I was still whispering. He cocked his head to the side. "What do you mean?" "You scared me. Don't do that." I nervously chuckled while sweating bullets. He stayed quiet for a moment, looking absently around the room. Then his eyes shot up to mine. "You're scared of me?" Even thinking of the way he said that now, it makes me uneasy. I've started hiding all the blades in the house, and I make sure my bedroom door is locked tight every single night now. It was difficult to tell with his wonky lips, but I swear to you that when he asked if I was scared of him, he was smiling.